So under mini lecture notes, these are the instructor notes that have the solutions included in them. So 10.6 is the first one. So in your homework 4, you have something called literal equations. Literal equations are equations that have more than one variable. So what you have to keep in mind is that you're not going to have too many numbers in literal equations. Literal equations also mean something, and they also usually represent formulas. So when you look at the examples, you have the distance around a triangle, which is the perimeter. You have an interest formula, okay? And then you also have an area of a circle. And notice that you have pi, which represents a number, but the variables, the other ones, also represent numbers. So here, you're going to isolate the variable x, and you're going to use the properties of equalities like you have been using to solve equations. And all you do is the opposite operations, the things that you can do first, okay? So you're going to add q to both sides. Then you're going to divide by p. And then you could always just recheck your work just to make sure that you follow proper rules for solving equations. Now, these are the instructor notes, so by all means, use them as much as you like and just write down examples. And what I like to do is I like to do examples and see if I'm doing them correctly, so I would hide the solution. But these are full solutions. Sometimes they come up a little bit goofy because of whatever happens when you add files to D2L. And then we have mixture applications and uniform motion. So just read these application problems and what they involve, and then you just go through them step by step. You can even pause this video and see if you can figure it out on your own, right? So the total of two numbers is 250. And if x represents one number, write an algebraic expression for the other number. And you see here the other number is 250 minus x. And then in the next one, Beauregard spent $64 to make an advance purchase of 10 movie tickets for him and his friends. If adult tickets are $8 and senior discount tickets cost $5, determine the number of each type of ticket he purchased. So you just have to situate all of the things. And the way I used to do word problems like this is I would make it make sense in my head before I started trying to write an equation down. Okay? So you have $8.50 times x, because that's the unknown. And then $5 times the 10 movie tickets minus that same x. And it's equal to 64 because we have $64. So I used to always highlight or underline the things that I could, which was helpful. Also, remember to make sure it makes sense to you. And you can also use the book if you need further explanation. I think the book does a pretty good job of giving you a situated format that you can use. You can have you have those options where you can do some skill practice. And then what I really like is that you have videos, you have all kinds of things inside your book. And then, of course, my favorite are always when books include practice exercises and give you feedback right away, right? So you can practice. And then don't forget that you also have the PowerPoints. So these are all study tips that I would use in order to get the best out of this course. And yes, you are going to teach yourself a lot of the content. So this is the entire chapter outline, but for this homework, we are going between 10.6 and 10.8, right? So we are going to be searching for linear inequalities. So we have the concepts, graphing linear inequalities, set builder notation and interval notation, addition and subtraction properties of equality. We're already doing that. Sorry, it's inequality. And then multiplication and division properties of inequality. Inequalities of the form A less than X less than B, which are compound inequalities, and then the applications of them. So having a linear inequality in one variable just means that it is not, there's the exponent is 1, right? So this just means that something times X plus B is less than C, which is they're all numbers, and then less than or equal to, greater than, and greater than or equal to. Just different types of inequalities. The biggest problem I find is that students don't understand that they're comparing the left side to the right side. So make sure that you understand you're comparing X greater than -1. We don't read from right to left, we read from left to right. And even though we can write them backwards, we're still comparing the left side to the right side, okay? So just read over the rules that you need when you're doing interval notation, okay? Certain things mean what gives you the direction, right? So if you have parentheses, your left coordinate in those parentheses is your starting point, okay? But if you have brackets, we include those numbers in the solution. So when we have parentheses, we don't include them unless it's infinity. And when we have brackets, we do include those numbers in the solution. So you can see that in this chart, which I also believe is in your book. Okay? So you see where it says A is your starting point. It is a good idea to memorize these rules because students tend to get confused with what direction the arrow goes into. So just be careful. So with set builder notation, I kind of wish they had a little preview of that. But it just means y such that -2 is less than or equal to y, which is less than 4. And you just need to draw your number line for that. And then you have to draw your number line and just fill in the spots so that you can get some practice. But if you are confused about this, you can also leave me a comment and I'll make a separate video for that. And then, of course, you have more examples. You have examples all over the place. Going back to the notes that I provided, you see some of the things that were in the PowerPoint are in these documents. So there's the same thing there. And then you have examples. And you just solve inequalities the same way you would equations. So you solve them the same way. You just have to get used to the terminology. Practice, 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 and then you have to graph them in the end. So once you find those solutions, you graph them. These are compound inequalities. You can break them apart. It always took me more practice with these to understand what I was really talking about. So you do have to keep that in mind. And then, of course, once you find your solution, then you have to plot it on the number line. So if it's x is equal to 4, then you just have a closed circle, a closed dot. If it's greater than, right, you're just moving to the right. You're pointing your arrow to the right. And if x is greater than or equal to, you just have a bracket. So just notice the difference between the parentheses and the bracket. And then you have more practice. And again, if you need any further assistance, just let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. See you next time.